courses, by the way.
And this is when it says 7.5 credits. That's roughly 5 weeks, isn't it?
4 weeks.
Is it a 4-week
Yeah.
course? So these, in total, you're looking at 30 credits, which is 1 semester.
Mhm.
So it's split into 4 parts.
Exactly right.
The next one.
Yeah. The title already gives it away, stress and animal welfare. Well, if we want to learn about welfare of animals, then of course stress is one of the core phenomena that we need to understand. And again, as animals can not talk in the way that we do right now with each other, we have to find ways to figure out how animals experience stress and when they encounter stress, and hopefully to find ways to alleviate stress. So all these aspects are covered in that course, again, including practicals. So we really put big emphasis on not only classroom activities or working at home, but to apply the things.
Okay, and have you got an example of how you apply?
Well,
What
why
would
don't
do?
you step in on that?
Well, I can start with the very first course. So we went through basically a lot of different methods that you can use to measure behavior, because obviously you can't just record it and be like, oh, this is what's happening. You have to write it down, and then you have to analyze it and then say, statistically, this is what's happening. And so we learned a bunch of different methods, and we actually went into the field to try those out. So we went to a farm, and this was focused more on farm animals, but we worked with chickens, we worked with cows, we worked with dogs, and we essentially practiced the same things that we learned in the classroom. And I can say that this is true pretty much throughout the whole of the courses. So for the stress one, we focused like on heart rate or maybe on cortisol levels, and we always had some laboratory work or field work that accompanied the lectures.
Yeah, I mean, that has been my experience as well, being in it currently. We have definitely done a lot of using the methods that we have been taught to do, and also to do different forms of statistical tests on these as well. And yeah, I think since we have gone through the same, I think we have a very similar experience in that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Very good. And then the next two courses, animal cognition and behavior genetics.
Yes, animal cognition actually is a novel course that will run for the first time from Monday on. And we have a new staff member whose expertise fortunately falls into the area of animal cognition. And again, that connects very closely to the program, because animals have different cognitive abilities and also cognitive demands. If you think of captive animals, animals are smart in one way or another. And of course, for good welfare, it's necessary to address these cognitive needs, that an animal has to do something to interact with, to play with, and things like that. And that course will dig into this. Then behavior genetics. Of course, any behavior that animals and we humans perform has a genetic basis, or is at least influenced by genetics. And in this course, this connection between genes and behavior is looked into.
Okay. So that's the first semester, and these courses are all assessed through. Is it exams, or do you hand in reports, or how do you assess these courses?
Why don't you answer?
For my experience, it was a little bit of a mix of both. We had online exams, they were open book, a lot of them, and it's just like a normal exam, but you're doing it from home, essentially. Then we also had a mix of just hand-ins. So
Writing an essay.
yeah, exactly, essays, different lab reports. So I think it was a pretty well-balanced mix of doing a bit of everything, and I think they have pros and cons to both of them. But I'm glad we got to do both.
Yeah, but no exams for this first semester, as in lectures sitting in a big exam hall, and you have the traditional exam for the first semester.
I think it's a home exam in
Yeah,
some
I mean,
courses.
we
Yeah.
did not have any.
Yeah.
So
First. Okay. All right. Second semester. There's another 3 courses. And then we'll move on to the degree project. But the first 3 courses, explain a bit more about them.
Yeah. So zoobiology is to a large part taught at Kolmården Wildlife Park. And so there the students really get the opportunity to learn from experts that live and work in the zoo world, as we call it. How a zoo is run, what you have to consider when designing an enclosure, how to prepare and keep genetic diversity to avoid inbreeding. One of the coolest things, I think, is that the students in small groups have the chance to shadow and follow the zoo veterinarian. Because that's also part. If you keep animals under human care, then of course you need to provide medical care for the animals. And there are a lot of unexpected or not plannable things happen. So a couple of years ago, one group of students was lucky enough to literally witness the birth of a baby rhino.
Oh, wow.
Another year, a tiger had to be anesthetized because it had a foul tooth, which need to be extracted.
Did you
So
experience any of these?
Yes, I do think the zoo biology course is probably like the highlight of the courses, because you do get to live at the zoo for a certain amount of time. So you get to experience the behind the scenes like you couldn't in any other context. Because obviously when you go to a zoo, they give you information about the conservation work they do and everything, but it is a very, very different experience to see it from their eyes. And you see exactly like unpredictable things that happen, like a birth, or some animal needs to be taken care of, and you really get to shadow and you get to see these animals, sometimes up close, sometimes from further away. But also it leads to very, very interesting discussions that I'd never considered before, like ethical discussions and like what is important for a zoo to have for the animals, where is the line, like how can we constantly improve like the conditions the animals are in, what works in conservation and how zoos can contribute to it. It really, really was the like highlight course for me, I would say.
Great. I definitely agree with you. I mean, I had this course just the other year, and I definitely agree that it is the highlight. It has some very tough aspects to it, like you are living in the zoo for roughly a month, and you have to be there. You have to be with other people. You need to take care of each other, and you get to do these very interesting things and see a lot behind the scenes. I personally did not get to see a birth or anything, but it would have been very cool.
Yes.
But we did get to see a lot of the behind the scenes training that they do for medical necessities, and I think that is very, very interesting to look at how much they are working with the animals and how gentle this approach is. And yeah, I think it was an extremely good course, and probably definitely the highlight of it.
It sounds fun.
Opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. So the next course is not going to
Yes.
match this one, but it's an
Well,
important
in a
course.
way it does. So the very long and spurry name, Case Studies in Conservation and Sustainable Development. The interesting thing about this course is that it's read together with our other master's program in ecology and sustainable development. So here the students from both programs are presented with case studies, with problems that they are supposed to solve. For example, there is human-animal conflict, that elephants are permanently raiding crop fields. How can you find a solution for that? And reading this course together from an ethological point of view and an ecological point of view leads to very interesting discussions, because you will be surprised how different angles and approaches ecologists and ethologists might suggest to come up with a solution.
That's really good. I mean, I think that's a really good example of what we are good at here at Linköping University, this cross-disciplinary approach to a problem or a situation.
Exactly.
And then you have primate ethology.
Yes.
So, is that where you get to play with monkeys? Yeah.
well, I happen to be in charge of that course, as I was lucky enough to do research on primates for more than 30 years now. And so again, we spend a week at Kolmården and do observations and even small experiments with the primates kept there. And as primates are our closest relatives, of course, that leads automatically to a number of questions: how human language evolved, how our communication skills evolved, what are the differences and commonalities between us and them, if there is such an us and them
Yeah.
at all.
Are there more differences or are there more commonalities?
Well, that depends. This is almost a philosophical question, which the students get aware of.
What do
Mhm.
you think?
I think it all depends on the context of the discussion, because obviously we are humans, we are animals. So in that sense, we're very similar to primates. But obviously, if we compare how we humans live in society with technology and all of these things, then we are very different. So I would say it fully depends on context.
You agree? Yeah. So these are the that's the kind of end of the taught courses within the program. And then so you've done this and then you're in about April, May
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
your first year. You then start looking at your degree project before the summer holidays.
Yes. Well, they already, most of them already start with the practical work before that.
Okay.
So they are supposed to start thinking about what kind of project they might be interested in, basically from day one on.
Mm-hmm. And do they get, I mean, is that something they come up with themselves, or is it something that the program helps with, or how do you come up with?
Yes. So a little bit of both. So on the one hand, we teachers, of course, have our areas of expertise and interest, and the students are encouraged to knock at our doors, and we happily share our suggestions for projects. On the other hand, the students are absolutely free and welcome and encouraged to develop project ideas of their own. And then again, they have to knock at our doors and bring forward these projects. And then it's our sometimes difficult job to bring you down to planet Earth and to decide, yes, this is doable within 1 year and with the financial means, or perhaps you should think about a different project. So roughly 50% of our students develop ideas of their own, and roughly 50% take on ideas forwarded by us teachers.
And this is also, if we go on to the next slide, you can see that the entire second year is devoted to a thesis project. I mean, and most of our programs, most programs in Europe, I believe, your thesis is 30 credits, so it's 1 semester. But here you get to spend the entire year.
Exactly
What's
right.
the thinking behind that?
The thinking behind that is that it is much more rewarding, both for the students and for us teachers, if students have the opportunity to really dig deep into a project. Particularly when it comes to animal behavior, it usually takes almost a year to collect scientifically meaningful data, which often enough then really at the end turn into a real scientific publication. But it's just more rewarding if you have the time to go in deep.
Mm-hmm. What did you think? I mean, you've done yours. Have you started yours now?
I am
You've-
doing
yeah.
mine currently.
Yeah, currently doing yours. So what did you do yours?
So I worked at an intersection between animal behavior and like ecology conservation. So I ended up working with a research group outside of Linköping University because I really wanted to work with fisheries. And so we were working on testing the specific device that prevents dolphins from being caught in fishing nets. And going off of what Matthias said, I do think it's incredibly important to have a full year to work with, because especially that first summer, because we start the thesis around May, June, and that first summer is really, really important to collect a lot of data. So in June, I spent about 3 weeks in the field, just collecting information and obviously like preparing everything and getting the ball rolling. And without the full year, it would have been so difficult to have enough data to then write a thesis on. So I really think that the 60 credit thesis is a big important thing about like preparing you for whatever you do after.
Mm-hmm. And what have you started doing?
Yeah, so my thesis is about animal cognition. And right now I am doing a study on how dogs are able to reorganize information. And currently I am training dogs on recognizing 2 different colors. and they will then be able to essentially navigate through a maze using this knowledge. And then we're adding more obstacles into this as we go. I'm also going to do this exact same thing on children between 3 and 5 years of age. And this is a study that builds upon a study by my supervisor that he did on macaques.
Also, this sounds like it's so much fun. So basically, you get to hang with dolphins, you get to hang with dogs, and that's your part of your thesis work. Yeah. We have a few more examples of thesis projects so that you can see what other students have chosen to do.
Exactly. So this is just supposed to illustrate what our students did thesis-wise in recent years. So one student chose to go to Zimbabwe to record and analyze the vocal repertoire of lions. One followed released wolf pups in Siberia. So they were radio tagged, these little animals. So that was a reintroduction project because the population there was almost extinct. So again, very applied.
Very much
She followed up how successful these pups managed to get accustomed to the wild. Another spent a very pleasant summer on the beach of the North Sea, observing harbor seals. Can we have the next slide, Tabs?
Yeah.
Thank you. Then these are a couple of examples for projects that were based in a zoo. And the left one is a wonderful example for testing a tracking device that is supposed to see how lynx in the wild are doing. But first, of course, you have to test such a novel device in a zoo setting. And only this knowledge then allows us, yes, now it's the time to capture wild lynx, to prepare them with these collars, to release them, and then to follow them remotely. And yeah, we can offer projects with all kinds of zoo animals.
Elephants and seals.
Elephants, fur seals, and on whatever topic the students are interested in.
Is there another slide?
Yes.
Yeah, one more. Oh yeah. So
this is more with pet and farm animals. So if you're more interested in that part of the animal world, so one study found quite convincingly that stressed dog owners have stressed dogs and vice versa.
A bit like stressed parents have stressed children.
There you go.
Yeah.
And well, again, if you know about this, then perhaps you can take measures to improve the welfare, in that case, of both the dog and the dog owner. Also, assessing dog emotions using a non-invasive, fairly novel method is, of course, a good thing to have. And very applied, again, at dairy farms. You know that newborn calves are immediately separated from their mothers. And depressingly often, these newborn calves then have difficulties to learn to suckle from a calf bottle. And one student looked into how to make it easier for the newborn calves to accept such bottles. So again, a very applied aspect to help both the survival and the welfare of the animals, and as a nice byproduct, the profit of the farmer.
Yeah. Okay. Was that the last slide? Or is that another?
I think so.
Yep. Oh, we got. Oh,
okay.
look, cognition and personality in chicken.
Yeah.
I think these are. So again, you have the effects of pesticides, which again, you're looking at the ecology side of,
exactly, yeah.
of animal welfare.
Yeah.
This sounds great. Sounds like I want to do the program now. Let's talk a bit more. We're going to open up for questions shortly, but let's talk about what it's like studying here. What's the workload? What have you felt?
For me, it's been quite a good balance actually between our workload and our own free time. I don't feel like I have been overworked in that sense. I don't feel like I've had to stay up really late and not had the time to take care of myself. So I think it's been really well balanced.
Yeah, I remember it being well balanced as well. I don't think I have anything to add.
But I think it's important to be structured, I suppose,
Yes.
and that's how you do end up with this free time by being structured.
If I may add, I'm happy to hear that from the students or former students. On the other hand, we really want to emphasize that this is a full-time job. Yeah. So studying at the master's level let's say we do not encourage to have a job on the side
No.
or to read other programs or courses on top of that.
Mm.
That would really make your progress in the program suffer.
Yeah, you should really, expect to do 40 hours per week. So I think this having free time and the workload being well balanced, it will be that way if you plan and if you're structured. The good thing about doing the courses one after the other is that you can focus on one course, but then it does need to be assessed. And I think everything starts pretty quickly after the program starts. So don't sit back and think, oh yeah, great, I have lots of time, because after 4 weeks you'll be assessed on that course. So I think this is an important point to make.
Mhm.
What about student life in Linköping? I can start with you. You're
Yeah.
still a student.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I have not been part of the organizations, like the ones that actually organize the events. I have gone to some events. I think that Linköping has a pretty active student life. We have a lot of different groups that do a lot of different things. I feel like there is something for everyone to get into if you have a certain interest. And yeah, I think it is very good.
Yeah, I would say Linköping University has a lot to offer, but it's also important to know what to look for. It's unlikely that it will all come to you. National students, and that's the ESN, the Erasmus Student Network, and the International Student Association. Will be everywhere when you come to Linköping University as an international student. They will be at the welcoming. They will try to add you to like newsletter groups. They will send you lots of notifications, and they have a lot of events. But I would definitely recommend not to stop there. Like, that is really nice, and they do very good activities, and it's a very easy way to make friends, because most of the time there's hundreds of students coming from outside and everyone's in the same situation, so it's easy to connect with other people. But I would definitely recommend not to stop there, because Linköping University, like, there's dancing associations, there's music associations, there's bands, there's the role-playing games associations, there's an association for anything that you could think of. So I would highly recommend that you look into it. There will be a little bit of a language barrier, but generally my experience was that Swedish people are very open, and any student is very excited if you're very excited to participate in the student association. So there is a lot happening, but you also have to look a little bit, I would say.
And a final question before we open up for questions from you guys. The ideal student. So what kind of mentality and academic background does a person need to have to succeed in the
Mhm.
program?
So formally, a student needs a degree that is biology related. And on top of that, that should include some credit points, of course, in animal biology or ethology, and also a few credit points in physiology, because the full name of the program is Applied Ethology and Animal Biology, and we need to cover that as well. As regard to the type of student that we are looking for is, I think one of the main characteristics is they should be curious. They should be willing, having this urge. I want to know. I want to from students coming from certain countries or areas of the planet are not accustomed to that. That we are approachable, that we actually appreciate students asking questions. So we'll never consider a student asking a question, oh, he doesn't know that, or she, but rather, oh, this student is interested. They want to understand something. So it's very encouraged to ask questions, to be interactive, to be proactive. And yeah, this curiosity is a thing.
And the curiosity. And a good command of English, which you both demonstrate.
Yes.
But it's all in English. There's all the writing, all the reading, all the communication. It's all in English. So you do need to be comfortable and be able to have a advanced level. So we do have IELTS is 6.5, and that's there for a reason. So you really need to think about that. Right. We're going to open up and see if we have any questions from you guys.
Yes, indeed. And you guys, that's where I come in. And I will read out some of the questions that we have received already. So I will go over to the live questions. Just to mention, if people have questions that are watching the recording, you can still write these questions as well. Of course, we cannot answer them live, but we can come back to you. The staff of Linköping University can come back to you later. Okay, so we have some questions. Teresa is asking, is the field work done mostly on farms, in the zoo, or with wild animals?
I would say mostly with the zoo animals, considering that you do have a very big collaboration with Kolmården. You go there a lot to do different observational studies, and you get to be part and see a lot there behind the scenes, like we said earlier. We also had the opportunity to take a one-day trip to a zoo that is right outside of Gothenburg, Nordens Ark, and see what they do. I mean, it's a different setting. So yeah, I think zoo animals definitely is what you work with the most.
Yeah, if I were to rank it, I would say zoo animals, then farm animals, because we definitely work quite a bit with those as well. And then I would rank wild animals last, but also because that's the most difficult and unpredictable group to work with. But I can say my personal interest is more with wild animals, so I made sure to reach out to a research group that worked with wild animals. And then I had a whole year to focus on that, and my thesis was on that. And so most of my experience ends up being with wild animals as well. So if wild animals are your interest, that doesn't mean that there's not something for you here in this program.
Thank you.
Great.
Hope that answers that question.
I hope so too. Otherwise, let us know. And we'll dig in deeper. Next question from Lisette. His question is, are there any restrictions or considerations regarding student accommodation with pets?
Oh, with pets.
With pets,
I think in a corridor room, you're not allowed to have pets such as like cats, dogs, etc. because of allergies. Because in a corridor room, you're just renting a room with bathroom, and you have a shared kitchen and common area. And so in Sweden, there's a very big concern with both smoking and pets because of allergies and things like that. So I do think that in shared apartments like that, that is not allowed. I think there are exceptions for like if you have a lizard or anything that doesn't actually shed, but then you have to be very careful when it comes to cleanliness and such. So if you do have a pet that you're bringing to Sweden, I would say private rentals, so not related to student shared flats. But definitely speak to your landlord first, because quite a few are not okay with you bringing pets into the home.
Yeah.
I think that's...
I think that's have a look at our page, student accommodation, on our website. There's lots of contact information for the main student housing companies. So you have Heimstaden, Studentbostäder. Heimstaden also have quite a lot of non-student accommodation, and if you were to get one of those flats, they would be more liberal with allowing pets. But student accommodation, no, you wouldn't be allowed to bring your pets. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Next question, Elias is asking, is a bachelor degree in biology really required to apply for this program?
Bachelor degree. Do you definitely have to have a bachelor degree in biology?
Well, it doesn't have to be specifically in biology. It needs to be biology related. Yeah. So, for example, if you have a bachelor's degree, let's say in agricultural sciences, which includes enough courses and therefore credit points that are on animal biology and not only on crops and plants, then you are eligible to apply.
I think we had someone who was had an education as a veterinarian,
Yes.
be a student. But
Yeah,
I can also remember that because in my bachelor's, we did focus on this physiology and on the animal behavior. So a lot of the topics of the lectures were not new to me, but I specifically remember the student that had a background in veterinary science, that for her, all of this ethology and all of these concepts, they were quite new. So I remember her having to work harder to make sure that she understood all of the lectures and all of these new concepts. So I would say it's definitely advantageous to have a bachelor's in biology.
Okay. And a follow-up on that, actually, Emma was wondering if a bachelor in animal wildlife with a major in wildlife is counted as biology. So you mentioned something.
Well, I cannot give you a definitive answer to that. It sounds very much like it should cover all the basics, but this is exactly why every applicant has to hand in their full transcript, and then the authority that evaluates your application will go really through the courses and add up how many of these fulfill our requirements. But from the title of that program, it sounds very much like it should be spot on.
And the transcript should clearly state the courses you've taken, and also if one of the courses has been slightly, the name of it has been ambiguous, also submit a syllabus where you can see what that course actually contained, because that might have had this animal physiology, but it's called something like animal welfare. So you don't you need to kind of show that you have the specific requirements within your courses.
Okay. Next question from Teresa about the thesis projects. Were they made in local fields or at the zoo? And were there university professors or other researchers involved?
Well, so for us, it's you have your project that you choose out of your own interest, and you have your local supervisor from the university who will help you out and give you all the guidance that you need. And then for me, I just have one supervisor. I'm doing my thesis here in Linköping. So I am working with him, and I'm working with one other person who helps me out training these dogs. Other classmates of mine have an external supervisor in the place where they are currently studying or doing their thesis, if that is in Spain or Mexico or wherever really. And you keep pretty close contact with your supervisors, both your external and internal, at least from what I have heard from them.
Where did you find the dogs for your thesis?
Okay.
On the street.
Yeah, basically.
Outside from the supermarket.
No, so my supervisor had this project that he had done with macaques, and my original idea that was going to be a completely different thesis at a zoo, and that kind of fell through, and we were just discussing a bit in general, and he mentioned this animal cognition study that he had done, and I thought that was very interesting, so I asked him if I could build on that and do something that would then include dogs and humans in this, because I just thought that would be very interesting. So to find these dogs specifically, I've posted a Facebook post in some dog, like Linköping dog forums, as well as on one of the people, her name is Anneli. She's helping me with these dogs. She has a dog behavioral
consultancy.
Right? Yeah. So she has a like an Instagram page where I wrote a little post. So that is how I found all of my dogs.
Wow, it's creative. Yeah.
But if I may just complement the answer to this question. So if you do your project, let's say abroad, then you need to have not only here a LEU-based supervisor, but on top of that, a supervisor at the host institution. This, of course, is easier if we teachers suggest such a project, because then it's usually a collaborator of ours, which we already know, and we know the facility and everything. But if students come up with a project idea of their own, then it's their responsibility to find a host institution. Can be a zoo, can be a university, can be an animal shelter, can be an NGO, you name it. But then the student also has to find this external supervisor who is willing and has the means also to do their job as on-spot supervisor.
Okay, thanks. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. And next question from Eva. How many students are accepted in this program?
I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say that. I can tell you how many students we, across the years average, we have in the program, and that is usually between 20 and 30.
So roughly between 20 and 30. I think that's a good enough answer.
All right, thank you. CCU, if I say that right, asked, can you give me please an estimate of the budget needed to live, and also regarding accommodation and the cost of living?
Okay. Do you two, either of you live in a corridor room?
No.
I did.
Yeah?
I did live in a corridor room. I think it was about 3,500 Swedish kronas per month, roughly. Obviously, inflation, it's been 2 years. We'll see. But in Sweden, or at least Linköping has something very nice, is that the rent is standardized. So if you do live in a corridor with one of these like big housing like companies, then the rent prices are quite standard. And yeah, so for rent it was about 3,500, I believe, which in euros, yeah, 300, 330, 300 something euros.
Yeah.
Which is a bit much, but this is with all expenses included. So internet is in there, electricity is in there, water bill is in there.
Heating.
So you don't have any other like hidden expenses. And that is definitely the biggest one, I would say. Besides that, there's groceries. I've found that groceries are definitely a bit more expensive. I'm originally from Portugal, so it's definitely a bit more expensive, especially when it comes to fresh produce, vegetable, fruits. All of those things are generally imported, so a bit more expensive as well. But I did not find that other things besides these fresh produce, they were not as terribly expensive. So I do think that if you budget and if you take care of like how much you spend there, I don't think it would be a terrible difference. And besides that, you want to make sure you leave some budget for student activities and maybe a party here and there. I know that the entrance to Karalen is maybe 150 kronas for a party on a Thursday.
Party venue. But you don't live in a corridor, so you live in
an apartment.
an apartment where you rent a room. Would you share it?
No, it is just I have a full apartment.
Okay. So that will cost a bit more than 3,500.
I think corridor room is definitely the most affordable option for anyone coming from
I think so
outside.
too.
Yes.
If you're from outside the EU, you actually need to have a certain amount every month to show the Swedish Migration Agency as part of your residence permit application, and I think that is around 10,000 kronas right now, which is about $1,000 or is it about 950,
yeah.
a bit over 900 euros. So you need to have this. You need to show them that you have this in your account, and it has to have been there for a few months back. But you can use this as a guide. I don't know, 10,000 kronas a month.
I would say if you live in a corridor room, it's definitely feasible to live quite under that. But obviously, like for outside of EU, then it's mandatory. But I don't think that you would have to live on that budget.
I think you can live like all right on just 600 to 700 euros. I would say that is like the baseline.
That's
Obviously
depends on how much you party.
Exactly, it depends on that.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it depends on that. It depends. I mean, like you could average groceries to about 2,000 crowns a month, but obviously you can go way under that. You can go way over it.
You
so
can
it's
use potatoes, like
somebody.
I think one of your fellow students. But I think you know, when I kind of travel around Europe, Sweden has this image of being really expensive, and I think it was, but not anymore. I mean, I was compared to the UK, for example, or Germany even. I don't think it is that expensive. Yet drinking out in bars, I think, is still. But I think eating out, if you get a lunch deal, it's fine. I was in the US a few weeks ago. That was expensive. I found alcohol to be cheap in Sweden in comparison. So it depends. But I don't think it's as bad as the rumor.
And as a final potential living cost point, here in Linköping, you can perfectly well live without a car. And students from overseas make big eyes. Wow, where can you go around without a car? Linköping is small enough that you can reach any point with a bicycle, which most students, and including me, do. There's also good and not too expensive public transport if you really need it, but you can definitely and very well get around without a car.
And even, I mean, most the corridors are quite near campus, the main campus, Campus Valla, and that takes what, 10 minutes to cycle?
Max,
if even that. So you don't even need to pay for public transport.
Yeah, it's a very cyclable city, and you can get pretty much anywhere in a maximum of 20 minutes, I would say.
I mean, one of the first things that people recommend to new students when they come or ask in general is, do you have a bike? And otherwise, there are a lot of those bike stores just everywhere around Linköping where you can buy secondhand bikes. And that is definitely highly recommended.
So also another thing, if you do end up in a corridor room, they are usually unfurnished, aren't they?
No,
Depends. Some come furnished, some not. There's both options. It is a bit cheaper if it's unfurnished, but obviously then you have to find the furniture by yourself.
But then you can buy furniture from the students who are leaving.
Exactly.
So that's a good tip. There are lots of secondhand. I think there's Facebook groups for LAU students. So even before you come here,
both for furniture and for literature.
Right. I hope that answers that question.
I hope so too. And then there's always IKEA, of course, in Sweden as well. Anyway, we have a next question from Helena. Is advanced certificate enough, or do we have to pass an IELTS exam? And advanced certificates, that's CAE.
Have a look on our website. We accept several English tests. The most common ones are IELTS and TOEFL. But do have a look. You can also have a look at universityadmissions.sc. English requirements for master's level. It has a long list of approved English certificates. We do not accept Duolingo. That question keeps coming more and more, but we don't accept Duolingo. But there are Cambridge certificates. There's quite a few of them, but have a look on the website.
Okay. So the link actually to the application and admissions portal from Linköping University is now displayed on the screen. You can see that link right there. So if you click on that at your own pace, you can then have a look at it after the webinar. Next question from Saskia. What is the average age of the students?
25-ish?
I would probably say between 23 to 25. But I have definitely also had people, at least in my course, that have been older, like 32. So.
Well, right now in August started the new round of the program, and there we have a student who's 63.
Wow.
There you go.
That's what I'm going to do when I retire. I'm coming to study this program. But that, I think, I mean, there isn't a maximum age. We don't have an age limit. I think the students are naturally going to be at least, I'd say, 23, because you need to have done a bachelor before, so you need to have had time to do that. But I think the students I've met have been, as you say, between 23 and 28, maybe, most common.
Yeah.
I was 22 when I started, I think.
You were young, I remember.
But there's definitely a big mix. I mean, there's some people that worked in between their bachelors and starting their masters. There's some people that worked before their bachelors and then did a bachelor's and then came here. So I would say it's also very common for someone to be 25, 26 during the program. And then we also have professionals that are like changing their career. And so we have people that are closer to 30 as well. So if you are a little bit older, I would say you'll fit in just fine. And one thing that I noticed, at least in Portugal, it's very common to like finish high school, do a bachelor's, do a master's, and then you start working. But in Sweden, it's quite common for people to work for a few years and then decide what they want to study, decide what they want to work on. So it's perfectly common to see university students that are a little bit older, and there is no discrimination there. I would say it's pretty common to find older university students, and it's not taboo in any way either.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Sergio was wondering if this program is partially or fully financed by the European Union, and if there are, what are some the requirements about that?
I think it depends where you're from. If you are an EU student, so Swedish or EU or Norway or I think Switzerland, so the EES countries, it is free. We don't charge tuition fee. If you're from outside of European Union countries, you will have to pay tuition fee. The program, I think, is roughly 25,000 US dollars for 2 years. So I'd say that's 23,000 euros for 2 years. That's the tuition fee. We do offer some scholarships, LIU international scholarships. They are partial tuition fee waivers. So they're either 25% or 50% tuition fee waivers. But so whether it's funded or not, I don't know if that answered your question, if it's funded by the EU or, but it's no, I'd say.
But it's for free for students in the EU.
It's for free.
So
Exactly.
guess that
EU
this
and
is
the ES.
probably the
Yeah.
good news for Sergio in that case. Question from Sisiu. Did you have to pay anything to conduct the thesis? Or is it financed by the university, especially in cases where it's conducted in other states?
Yes. If you decide to do your project, for example, abroad, then the university does not provide any funding. So here the student should be proactive. I'm very proud to say that 100% of all students who applied for Erasmus Plus funding to do their project abroad get their funding. So far, we did not have a single case where a student failed to get this Erasmus Plus scholarship or funding. It's a little bit more difficult if you do your project outside of Europe. Then again, if you as a student are proactive, I recommend approach our international office. They usually provide you with a list of foundations that might support your travel costs, for example. Having said this, yes, probably you have to cover, if you want to do your project in Mexico or someplace outside Europe, you might have to cover the travel costs, but keep in mind that quite often the living costs in those host countries is cheaper compared to Sweden. So,
and the living costs you would have had here anyway. So
yeah,
but there isn't. We don't pay fees to any other institution to do the thesis.
That's correct.
That's
yes.
correct. So within the EU, I think that kind of connects a little bit to the EU funding. So the Erasmus Plus is an EU fund that you can apply for money for when you do a thesis or internship or anything similar within a degree. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. So next question from Teresa. Are there any jobs within the university that are accessible to students?
Not really. I mean, some of our students do end up with part-time jobs as teaching assistants. It is very difficult. You'll be competing with Swedish students who speak Swedish. Also, you should expect to spend 40 hours per week on your program. So it doesn't really leave that much room for work. You shouldn't be in the situation where you have to rely on part-time work to kind of work your way through your degree. You should have your finances and funding in order, sorted, planned before you come here, so that you don't end up in a situation where you're struggling, you have the added stress of where will I find money for next month's rent. You want to be in a situation where you can focus on your studies. So yes and no. There are some jobs within the university, but they are rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it. And when they do happen, they're maybe 10%. So they are indeed just a little bit of extra money. They're not something to rely on. But every once in a while, you see like help with I don't know, with welcome days or things like that. So here and there you can find the odd job, but it's really hard. And I can say as an international student, a lot of the jobs do require you to speak Swedish in one way or another. And obviously outside of the university, there are students that have their jobs, but again, without Swedish, it becomes quite difficult, I would say. But a common choice for Swedish students is to work over the summer sometimes.
Yeah.
So that is an option that does not interfere with the studies.
And if you're in a corridor room, your contract will be for 12 months, but 2 months you don't pay rent. So that's actually a really good way of working and kind of saving, because if that's roughly 350 euros, then that's 700 euros you're saving there. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, we're getting thumbs up, I see. So I think that's a good sign. Next question from Eva. Is there a way to increase the chances of being accepted?
Well, I can give you my Swiss bank. No, I'm kidding here. Sorry. No, well, take a good and careful look at the requirements on the application pages. And if you have every requirement's fulfilled, then you have a fair chance to be accepted into the program. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So make sure you meet the specific requirements. So have a look, program page, you kind of expand a box there and it'll say what you need. Make sure you have that, and make sure you apply on time and that you have everything. Make sure that you do prove your English. Make sure that if you're an EU student that you upload a copy of your passport. Don't assume that we will know that you're an EU citizen just because you live in, say, France. So these things are important.
Okay. And I think the application is through University Admissions.se.
University admissions, it's open now, closes on the 15th of January. You then have until this next year, it's the 3rd of February, to submit your documentation, which is your copy of your diploma, a transcript, proof of English, and your citizenship. Everything needs to be submitted before the... Did I miss anything? No. Before the 3rd of February. This is also important if you're planning on applying for one of our scholarships, that your application needs to be done on time. And that means both the online application by the 15th of January, but also the documentation needs to be in on time. And you apply for up to 4 programs at universityadmissions.sc. It's an easy process.
Yeah, the link is on the screen as well, so just popped it up there. So both links to these websites can be found in the link section at the bottom under apps, just for you to know. So easy link through. Let's see, we have last questions. So just to make sure. Yeah, it's from Teresa. Is it common for professors and researchers to accept help from students in their projects other than in a thesis?
Could you repeat?
Do professors and researchers, do you have students helping you in a lab or with your projects outside of the thesis?
Usually not, because usually we researchers, of course, we have PhD students, for example, and we have technicians who do lab work if necessary. And to repeat myself, you should really devote your 40 hours a week to your studies and not to additional internships inside a lab. The nice thing is that most of the courses or the course responsibles, the teachers, they will allow you to gain some insight what they are doing research-wise, because that's usually connected to the topics of the courses that they teach. So you will get some whiff of what is going on in the lab of this or that teacher.
And I think also with the hands-on projects, such as staying in the zoo for a month and then back again for a week for another course, I think you'll get a really good insight into what it's like doing the research and doing the work by being in that environment.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that hopefully answers your question.
Okay, I hope so too. Next question from, let's see, Cecile, I'm sorry. What do you mean as a proof for English? Do we need a certificate or are there any other options?
Yes, you need a certificate. You need to have a look at university admissions, English language requirements. But yes, you do need to prove your level of English. So IELTS is an internationally recognized test. You do that test, and you have to end up with a score of at least 6.5. TOEFL is the other really popular one. That there are several others, but yes, you do need to prove your level of English. There are exemptions. For example, if you've studied in Germany and you have done English at high school level, you'll be exempt. You don't have to show a certificate. So really go to English language requirements and go to country specific information, because it'll say exactly what the deal is for your country. You could have done your bachelor in an English speaking country. That again would make you exempt, but really make sure you know what you need to do by looking at. And the country specific information, we're talking about the country where you studied. So that may not be the same as where you're a citizen, it may not be the same as where you live. But it's where you're studied, where your degree comes from. And again, but whereas the tuition fee, that is based on your citizenship. So you're going to keep those two separate.
Okay. Clear. So I think those were the questions we've received so far. I hope that all clarified those questions. If you have a last question, we can still take it. Last one. And then otherwise, we will wrap up the session. Just to mention also, if people joined late, I know some of you might have done that. This session is being recorded, so you can actually just stay on. It will restart, so within minutes. And otherwise, also we will send the recording to everyone. So that for one side, the links you will find in the app section to apply, for example, and to find the requirements. And having said that, there is no further questions. So then I think slowly we will round off this session, round it up. And yeah, from my side, just quickly thanking everyone who joined, especially the panelists, of course, here in front of me. Matthias, thanks a lot for making your time, as well as Ellen, Rebecca, and Teresa, of course, you as well. And the audience that joined in, yeah, from all kinds of countries I saw. So maybe over to you, Teresa, to wrap it up.
I'd just like to say thank you as well for having joined us. Ask us questions. Go to the program homepage, and at the bottom you should see contact us. Put any questions that you might have that you haven't thought of. But I also think that you should go to our Instagram page. It's LIU. Linköping University. You used to post there. It's hosted by our students. So it's a really great way of finding out what life is like here. There's also an international students blog at LIU. Have a look at that. And Fika with Us podcast. I'll say those three sources are the best. It's the best way of really finding out what it's like here. The students talk about challenges, the ups and downs, tips being new, but it's a really great resource for anyone thinking of coming to Linköping University. So I would say, in one word, the best thing about the program:
contact with animals.
I agree. I was going to say animals.
Working with people, going to be a sentence, sorry. Working with people that have very different backgrounds